Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be in the world and whenever you happen to be joining us, whether it's live or recorded. Thank you for joining us for the fastest 15 minutes in food with Dr. David Hughes. I'm Charlie Arnot with the Center for Food Integrity, and our focus is on helping today's food system build trust. We do that in part by helping to understand the conversations happening around us. This is a very dynamic environment, not just in the US, but globally, and no one likes to talk about food more than David Hughes. He literally travels to the ends of the earth to share his insights and learn more about the latest trends shaping the food system. David, welcome, and we are thrilled to see you finally back home.
Yes, yeah. Well, last week I was close to home, actually, Charlie. I was in Portugal for the week, and Portugal's about 1,000 miles away from where I live in Wales. That's sort of like Chicago to Boston, I suppose. And thinking about it, you've got your 249th birthday for America tomorrow.
We do.
In Portugal, they're about 896 years old.
We're
Uh,
just pikers.
And it's a fabulous country if you're a foodie. It's small. It's only about the same size as Indiana, actually, Portugal, but it's got very regional, diverse cuisine. And as you'll know, I mean, in history, they had colonies around the world, not least in Africa, Mozambique, Angola, for example, Goa in India, Macau near China or next to Hong Kong. And as a result, they've still got that contact with regard to cuisine. So it makes for a fascinating. We always love going there, but I'm happy to be
Yeah.
home.
Very interesting culinary experience, and we are glad you are back. In fact, we are live today. So if you do have some questions, you can drop them in the chat or the Q&A. We'll pick those up hopefully by the time we finish, have an opportunity to connect with those. All right, so this morning we're going to discuss a whole range of topics, how food companies are adapting to higher prices, efforts to help us eat better, not just in the US, but around the world, and a surprising segment of British agriculture. It is very unique and very topical and timely as a result of our conversation today. Okay, we're going to start with one topic that unfortunately is quite familiar and recurring, and that's food price inflation. We just don't seem to be able to get our arms around it. So, David, tell us what food companies in the UK are doing to help keep costs down.
Right. Well, and you're right. I mean, consumers and food industry managers are really jumpy. Last month we had 4.5% food price inflation, and of course, as you say, it's not just a UK issue; it's global. I was looking at the FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization Global Food Price Index, and it showed that red meat, dairy, coffee, and cocoa prices are spiking in many parts of the world. And it's tough if you like chocolate, for example, where cocoa prices have tripled in the last 2 years. But as a result, back to the UK, we're seeing this sort of still pressure on food prices. Consumers are particularly nervous. And so food industry managers are going to the government saying, look, can you hold off on those initiatives which you were set to introduce at the end of this year, because they may well have a that they will just push inflation past what we want to see it. So, for example, in our particular case, in about another 2 months, we're introducing packaging tax, which I've mentioned before, and that's a tax by government on every packaging item with food and drink in it. And it depends on the element of the packaging. So plastic packaging is taxed at about $600 per ton.
Wow.
Card and paper is about $270. So you as the manufacturer, when you put your stuff in the packaging, you get taxed that and you then pass it through the chain. Of course, then that will drive food prices up. And they're saying to government, can you just hold off this for the minute because it won't be helpful. Whether they do or not, we'll find out in the next couple of weeks. Uh, Also, I'm often negative about government. Oh my war, again, bureaucracy in all its forms. But actually, we've had rather better news on bureaucracy. The UK and the EU have announced what they refer to as a historic deal to slash red tape when trading food and drink between the EU and the UK. Uh, if you recall, 5 years ago, we Brexited, we exited the EU. And as a result of that, the EU treated us as being fearsome in terms of the products we were exporting to them. And similarly, we did the same to them. So if you're sending meat or dairy, you require veterinary approval, etc. It just drove bureaucratic costs up. And thank the Lord, common sense has prevailed, and they're now saying, okay, let's go back to where it was before. Yes, you're not part of the EU, but we still share. We always have shared the same phytosanitary regulations. Why wouldn't we just go back to what it was? And consumers and food industry is saying, thank the Lord for that. I mean, another point too, relating, I can link this back, I think, to food price inflation, is that in the US, as far as I remember, Charlie, you've got the same level of problem as we have in terms of theft from supermarkets. That's just gone up hugely. And also to a degree, which is shameful, violence, abuse of staff in the shops. And what we've seen in the UK is two of our major retailers, one Asda, which is ex-Walmart, and the other Iceland, and not the country, but Iceland is a supermarket chain which specializes in frozen food. And they're introducing, if I get it right, facial recognition technology. So these two supermarket chains are scanning the faces of people, of their customers, as they enter the front door and checking this against a criminal database. And
Wow.
if there's a problem, they go, uh-oh, it sends an alert to staff if the face matches a villain. So the goal is both to reduce theft, but also to protect staff from violence. Now, does everybody like this? It seems a reasonable idea. Well, no, not necessarily. There's a special organization, Big Brother Watch, for example, has slammed this as an attack on privacy rights. But what I particularly liked, just listening to the Iceland chairman, and he'd got a good line. He said, look, if I have to choose between upsetting a campaign group or protecting my colleagues, I'll pick our people every time. And too right.
Yeah, makes great sense. Tomorrow we celebrate, as you noted, our Independence Day, and independence is a fierce value that we defend here in the United States. So I don't know if cameras in the supermarket would ever be embraced here, but it's very unfortunate that they are having to embrace that kind of technology to cut
Yeah.
back on theft and hooliganism and assault in the supermarkets. It's really, really tragic. So, David, as you know, in the US, we spend more on diet related healthcare than we do on food. And that's a tragedy. And there's an initiative called Make America Healthy Again. And there's some questions about the validity of that and the strategies that they are proposing. But there's lots of support for the concept of making America healthy again. And you're seeing similar activities in the UK with a focus on how do we use diet to improve health.
Exactly. You've got your Maha. Is that how you say it?
That
Maha.
is it.
And we're getting our British version. And actually, next week, our government will publish their 10-year health plan, and its principal focus is on promoting healthier foods. I mean, their goal is to reduce stress and the cost to our National Health Service, which is really, really creaking, particularly relating to diseases related to diabetes, obesity, etc. Huge health issues for us, which are just, the cost is just getting out of control. The government goal is to try and get food manufacturers and retailers to make much healthier food choices the easiest choice for shoppers. So remember, supermarkets have particular power in our food, in my food industry, as 50% of food sold in supermarkets is private label. So they're the biggest brands, for goodness sake. And the government's asking retailers to set new standards to make average shopping baskets healthier. How? By reformulating products, by tweaking recipes, by changing shop layout, by giving discounts on healthy food, and tweaking their loyalty schemes so that they promote healthier options. But particularly, what is going to be mandatory is that all supermarkets and all food manufacturers have to disclose the percentage of sales that of their total sales on so-called unhealthy foods relative to so-called the fresh foods, the healthier foods, fresh
Right.
fruits, vegetables, and fresh meats. So how do they define healthy? Well, it all revolves around, as we call it here, HFSS. So it's foods which are high in fat, salt, and sugar are perceived to be much less healthier. and they're saying, what is the proportion of your sales on that? And what's your target for getting this down? But what I thought was significant, Charlie, was that normally when government call for something to be mandatory, there's a ooh no from the food industry, but all the food industry, all food retailers and all food manufacturers said, we're on for this,
Wow.
and we want it to be right across the industry so there's a level playing field. But you know, it is difficult to nudge consumers, as you know, in the US, to nudge consumers to healthier choices, and particularly if you're a lower income household. I was looking at a very respectable charity we have called the Food Foundation UK, and they, on their survey, had taken 1,000 calories of healthy foods, such as fruit and veg, is double the price of 1,000 calories of products like ready meals, processed meats, and similar types of HFSS foods. And what's more, if I look back over the past 2 years, healthy foods, so-called healthy foods, have seen double the price inflation of other foods. And it's that's not going to help it because in the end, it's that I would say there's at least 40% of households in the UK are struggling at the moment to put a meal on the table.
Yeah. Well, as we talked before, David, I think the high fat, high sugar, high salt definition is more clear and easier to manage than ultra processed, which is very complex and not very well defined. But at the same time, as you noted, encouraging people to change dietary habits is a tall order, and it's
Yeah.
not likely to be done by food system alone. If we can't encourage better eating habits at a younger age, that shift is going to be incredibly challenging. So we're going to shift and talk about agriculture, which is where we do a lot of work. I was stunned when you told me about the fastest growing segment of British agriculture. I had no idea this was even a viable segment, much less the fastest growing segment. So tune us into this one.
Right, and it's viticulture. So it's growing grapes to make into wine. It's Britain's fastest growing ag sector. There's from nothing. We've now got 1,000 plus vineyards covering 12,000 acres. It doesn't sound a lot, but that's from nothing. And what are we good at? We're best at producing sparkling white wine. And just underscoring that, it's really intrigued me that it's attracting champagne producers from France to come over to the UK to get into winemaking and to grape growing in the south of England, the southeast of England. So, for example, Taittinger, which is a great global champagne brand, and Pommery are both here. And what's more, the competitors are arriving too. And so our little niche market, we're particularly good at the premium market end. Not that it's easy. If you look around, I mean, globally, I was just looking at the figures that there's a downturn in wine and beer consumption across the board. And the drinks industry is bracing itself for a tobacco moment. It sounds rather ominous, doesn't it? And they're really spooked by the World Health Organization saying that there's no safe amount of alcohol that doesn't affect your health. Actually, in the UK, wine consumption has gone down on a per capita basis every year for the last 14, not in the Hughes household, I might ask. And what's more, I was just looking at the figures again. 7 of the top 10 alcohol brands in the UK, the big brands, are down on volume and value. So it's tough trucking. But fingers crossed, we're going to have a wine industry, and it's flourishing in the UK.
All right, we only have a minute or so left, but David, there might be a toast of champagne or two coming up at an annual event that celebrates lawns in the UK. Tell us briefly about that.
Yes, and it's Wimbledon tennis week, and for a change, it's wonderful weather. It's not pouring down, and yes, in England in particular, we're famous for our grass courts and strawberries and cream. And England in summer really is the land of the grass lawn. And why? Because 200 years ago, those that had money, our landed lords and ladies, that built great country houses with spectacular lawns for their sons and daughters to play cricket, tennis, and croquet on. And now I just saw the stats the other day, 75, 3 out of 4 households in the UK have a lawn,
Hmm.
small though it may be, but it's changing. It used to be you'd manicure your lawn. My dad used to manicure his lawn, took great pride in it. But now there is a no mow May. And so rewilding of the household lawn is coming in. The lawn is now a flourishing meadow buzzing with bees and other insects. My father would have, well, he is turning in his grave, I know. So come July in the UK, we just think really of gardens, Wimbledon, and strawberries. And yum, yum, why wouldn't you?
Perfect. Absolutely fabulous. David, thank you again. As always, be sure to join us on August 7th for another edition of Connecting the Dots with Dr. Food, the fastest 15 minutes in food. Thank you so much for joining us. I see we have listeners from a variety of areas around the country and even outside the U.S. So thank you for joining us on this early morning or afternoon or evening, depending on where in the world you might be. So if you're in the U.S., enjoy a safe and happy 4th of July. If you're outside the country, enjoy a lovely long weekend wherever you are. And David, we look forward to connecting with you on the 7th of August. Have a great day, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.
I know. Happy birthday.